Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. An 18-wheeler carrying bees overturned on a Mississippi highway.
I'm Tony Kornheiser. I'm surprised that story isn't getting more buzz. Get it? Buzz? I hate bees.
That was almost as bad as the Uranus opening. Almost.
I hate bees very much, but I also know that honeybees are endangered, and I want them to be okay. I just want them to be okay somewhere away from me, because I'm afraid
Can't
of
you
them.
manufacture honey? We don't need bees for honey or something that tastes
we do need bees
like honey.
for pollination. No, we need bees. Trust me on this. I've read about this. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Will Wade is back. Anthony Edwards throws one down, and Andrea Carter joins to talk about the women's draw for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with Blake Snell, the most recent National League Cy Young winner. Not only staying in the NL, but staying in the same division. Last year's Padre is this year's Giant. It's a 2-year deal for $62 million, and Snell can opt out after this year. Wilbon, what does Snell do for the Giants, and was this deal worth the wait?
Yeah, it's worth the wait, yeah. You're getting $30 million a year, yes, it's worth the wait. Now, let's go straight to what it does for the Giants, because that's what interests me. Because the Dodgers are the team we're going to pay most attention to, most of us, nationally, to start this season in a minute and a half. But, Tony, the one thing that can trump all the hitting that the Dodgers have and MVPs and Mookie, who may be the best player in baseball, maybe, is pitching. Starting pitching can do that. And when you have Logan Webb and Blake Snell, or Blake Snell and Logan Webb at the top of that rotation, you got last year's Cy Young and runner-up Cy Young. You got in Blake Snell one of 7 guys to win a Cy in each league. And again, Logan Webb was a runner-up. And you're going to get at some point during the season, presumably, a healthy Robbie Ray. So, and they've added enough in the way of everyday position players like Matt Chapman. The Giants, Tony, are nothing to sneeze at, even though the Dodgers have been crowned already by so many people. Starting pitching can negate that.
Yeah, I disagree with you on whether it was worth the wait. I don't think it was worth the wait for Blake Snell. He's a Scott Boras client, and this has not been a good offseason for Scott Boras clients. He's the third. He was looking for a 9-figure deal and a multi-year deal, and he's the third guy to sign for essentially a 1-year contract, including Matt Chapman and including Cody Bellinger. So I'm not sure it was worth it. The knocks against him are pretty obvious. He has an alarmingly high walk rate. He led the majors in walks last year. It's 4.95 over 9 innings, which is astonishingly hard. And no manager ever lets him through the lineup 3 times. They always take him out, as you pointed out in a World Series a few years back. Look, thank you for mentioning Logan Webb. Logan Webb was the guy when the Dodgers were signing Ohtani and Yamamoto and everybody else. Logan Webb stood up and basically said they were greedy pigs, and he hated them because they were spending all this money. So now he's got Snell, and he's got Chapman, and he's got Jorge Soler, and he's got a center fielder for Korea, and he's in the high luxury tax bracket too. So maybe he wants to walk some of that back, because the Giants, you're right, the Giants are good, and they're good with free agents just like the Dodgers.
Tony, just one quick follow-up on whether it was worth it. I ain't holding a GoFundMe for Blake Snell. I mean, the market is the market. We thought the market was going to yield more for Justin Fields. It didn't. So things happen to change the conditions every year. And so I'm not, sorry. And I'm not going online looking to send some Zelle money to Blake Snell. I'm not. Let's move to March Madness and the surprising return to the NCAA tournament by McNeese State and its first-year coach, Will Wade. The Cowboys hadn't made the tournament since 2002, and Wade hadn't coached since LSU fired him 2 years ago, following NCAA findings of recruiting violations. Now McNeese State is 30-3 and faces fifth-seeded Gonzaga in Thursday's first round. Tony, big programs once shunned Wade. Do you think this season's success will now change their minds?
So do I think that a big program would like to have Will Wade now? No. I think 5 to 10 big programs would like to have Will Wade now. Okay? So he got in trouble. I mean, he cheated. He gave players money. Then you couldn't do that Now there are no rules. You can do pretty much whatever you want. He's in purgatory now in McNeese State, but he'll serve his time, and then he's going to get a big job. And that's because of these numbers. They were, 11 and 23 last year without him? And now they're 30-3, and in the games he's physically been allowed to coach, they're 22-1. Do I think Oklahoma State might be interested? Do I think West Virginia might be interested? Do I think Louisville might be interested? Of course. Of course I do. This guy is spinning straw into gold, yes. And Mike, this is the way college basketball is now, and college football as well. There are no more student athletes. There are employees. That's how it works. NIL changed everything.
By the way, let me go back to something you said. Don't tell Joe Dumars, don't tell my man Joe Dumars that McNeese State is purgatory. Because he turned that, his time at McNeese State, their most famous alum, into a couple of NBA championships and a hell of a career, which is still going on at the executive level. But, Tony, you don't have to be a big school. You just got to be a rich school. You got to be a school with a couple of sugar daddies, and yes, I'm using that term advisedly, who basically say, you know, through the methods and means of NIL and collectives, we got money. We can go to the transfer portal and get whoever we want. This is part of the context of Jay Wright's comment that the Blue Bloods ain't going to necessarily be the Blue Bloods anymore. And some of them are rich. They're rich too, but they're not the only ones, Tony. You can go get Will Wade and say, you know what,
Mike,
we got a bucket full of money for you and some transfer portal recruits.
What is the difference between Wade and Hugh Freeze? The answer is nothing. Hugh Freeze was fired at Mississippi because he cheated at football. And then he rehabbed at Liberty, and now he's at Auburn. Auburn is big time in college football. Yeah. Will Wade's going to go big time. What you're saying is theoretically right, but he's going to go big time with even bigger money. We move on. Yesterday we played What's the Word on Kyrie Irving's left-handed hook shot that beat Denver in Game 68 of an 82-game season. Wilbon, you used the word historic. Today we will play What's the Word on Anthony Edwards' dunk last night against Utah in Game 68 as well. So, Wilbon, what is your word? That's your word?
Fearless is one of them. He's fearless. Anthony Edwards is fearless. When he blocked that shot and he crashed to the floor and he bounced up, he was fearless. When he threw that dunk down and injured his own self and gave a guy a concussion, he was fearless. I talked to Anthony Edwards a few days ago, Tony. I just want to get a sense of him and who he is. He is unbelievably, people may say, oh, he has some baggage. He is unbelievably charismatic. No matter what else you may think of him, he is fearless, Tony. These are MVP moments. They stand out in your mind. And, Tony, this kid has to be reckoned with. And if he keeps Minnesota 1 or 2, yes, right up there with Joker, he's going to be in my consideration for a first-place vote. Fearless he is.
Thank God we got your first-place ballot in because we haven't had it all week, and we don't want to wait till next week to do it. My word is right-handed. Yesterday I used left-handed for Kyrie. This is right-handed. He used his right hand. I mean, you know what? It's a lovely dunk. I think it's still worth 2 points and then got fouled, and it's worth 3, and they won by 10. So to me, it had no direct effect on the game except maybe aesthetically. He said afterwards it was like a dream come true. And while he did it, he dislocated a finger. I don't know if that was part of the dream for Anthony Edwards. It's not, Kyrie shot 1 a game. This didn't win a game. You want me to go back over the list of the baby Skyhook and Jordan over Elo and Leitner? I mean, thank God this team won because we wouldn't get to it all if this team lost.
Let me ask you a quick question. When you were in the arena in the front row, and your boy Julius the Dr. Irving or David Thompson, who you love, when those guys threw down, you don't think that rallied and lifted their teams and perhaps contributed to a victory even though it didn't come in the last 3 seconds? Of course you didn't think that. You thought they rallied their teams.
Wait. I thought you were asking me. I didn't get a chance.
You
said what I thought. Don't ever compare anybody to Julius Irving and David
I knew you were going to say that.
Don't go there. Let's take a break. Coming up, why did the Women's Committee put 2 of the sport's biggest stars in the same regional? We're going to ask Andrea Carter. I'm not using the word
quadrant. We'll also ask whether unbeaten South Carolina seems at all beatable. When Julius threw those
I'm not using line to gain. I'm not using quadrant.
There's nothing.
Let's dig into the women's bracket with ESPN basketball host, analyst, and reporter Andrea Carter. We're going to start with this. Wilbon and I were outraged the other day with the committee putting LSU and Iowa in the same regional. Do you have any insight as to why the committee wouldn't have created separate paths for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese to get to the Final Four instead of putting them in a potential knockout game before the Final Four?
I know. Listen, guys, I was outraged too, but the only way I can easily explain it for the sake of time and the people at home is there are so many rules that go into creating the bracket. The committee calls it bracket integrity. And so there are rules like if you're a top 4 seed, you can't be in the same region as someone in your conference that's also a top 4 seed. So South Carolina and LSU, by rule, cannot be in the same region. So there are little things like that that come into play. What the committee decided was LSU didn't have a strong enough resume to be a 2 seed. That's what I've gathered. So they get to the 3 seed, and now all those rules come into play to figure out where LSU has to go. It's considered an S curve. It's considered so many different things. The easiest way to put it is it's like paint by number. I don't know when the last time you two did a paint by number. I can't really say when the last time was. But paint by number. You look at the numbers, you fill in the color, and you don't see the picture until the very end. And that's essentially what the committee did. They number all the teams, they put them where they're supposed to go based on bracket integrity, and then you take a step back away from it, and you're like, oh, hell, these two teams are going to play each other. But if you try to play around with it based on storylines and situationally, no matter where you put teams, there's going to be a storyline. So in defense of the committee, even though I hate it, probably more than you two do, because nothing's better than comparing last season to this season in the Final Four. We won't get a chance to do that, but there are different rules that went into play to kind of shake all this out.
Boo, boo, boo on their rules. They ought to get rid of some of them. But let's move to South Carolina, Andrea. They're unbeaten, of course. But do you see them as unbeatable? And there is a difference. Anybody you see out there, when you look at the entire bracket, you just say, okay, there's some kryptonite right there.
South Carolina is unbeatable when they play their best basketball. Dawn Staley likes to call it the standard. She says the South Carolina standard has been there before this season's team, before last season's team, before that. The standard has always been the South Carolina standard. When they play to that, to me, it's things like patience, playing inside out, creating turnovers, playing with strong defensive instincts, those type of standard. When South Carolina plays with that this season, they're unbeatable. We thought that was the case last season, but think about last season, Wilbon, South Carolina averaged 4 threes a game. Their defense was so elite, they made up for it until they ran into Caitlin Clark. This season, South Carolina is averaging 6.5 threes a game at about 8% better. So they're not only making more, they're shooting more at a more efficient level this season. So for me, South Carolina's best this year is unbeatable. When I look at the bracket, there are some teams that have players, say it was South Carolina going against Iowa, South Carolina going against LSU. When you have players that can score 30, or when you have 2 players like Angel Reese and Anissa Morrow who can combine for 40 by themselves, those high-scoring teams that play with an edge, play with a chip on their shoulder. For Iowa, it's their defensive scheming that worries me a little bit. That's what we saw last year. For LSU, it's just their overall team and the energy that they have. Those are 2 teams that I would watch out for. USC is a tricky one because Juju could also pop off for 40 or 50 points. But really, no matter who South Carolina plays, in my opinion, they're going to need help from South Carolina. Whether that's South Carolina shoots a low percentage from 3, South Carolina takes bad shots, foul trouble comes into play. Whoever South Carolina plays, if they end up losing, it's because South Carolina gave them a little bit of help as well. Because best on best, I'm taking the Gamecocks.
You mentioned Juju Watkins, and I want to go specifically there to the other USC and Juju Watkins, who Tony and I have not talked about enough this season. Is a freshman ready for this stage, and what makes her so special if she is?
Not all freshmen are ready for this stage. There are a few across the nation that are ready for this stage, and Juju Watkins is at the top of that list. She is so poised and under control. I'm telling you, the way that she plays, there are 2 things when I watch Juju. She either, 1, dictates the defense with her ball handling, with her control, with her change of speed. She has the ability to dictate what the defense does, but if the defense happens to dictate her on the first action, she's able to react immediately and respond. So it's her skill set, it's her body control, but it's also how quickly she thinks. Like, she is the type of player that's like, oh, you're going to shade me this way? All right, I'm going to back up a little bit. Now, if you close, I'm going by you. But if you stay back there, I can go right into my shot. So not only does she think quickly, but her body reacts quickly. Like, there are some players, me personally, I might have known what I was supposed to do, but my body wasn't going to get there, right? Or my body was getting there, but I wasn't thinking about it. Juju's got both as a freshman. Her thought processes, her high basketball IQ, and her skill can follow. Strong dribbles, different moves, different step throughs to get to the rim. She gets into her shot quickly. She elevates. I could keep going because I'm a fan as well as an analyst, but she's just that elite with the ball in her hands, and she understands the game and knows how to read the defense right in front of her.
Thanks, Andrea. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for having me. This tournament is going to be crazy. You all just watch. I can't wait.
Wilbon is with you on that. Loves crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Wilbon loves crazy.
I can't wait.
Let's take one last
Very
break. Still to come. The men's draw technically gets underway tonight, you know, with the play-in games. Who's got the edge?
That must be Dayton, Ohio. And how concerned should the Warriors be about last night's home court loss to the Knicks? One I did not really see coming, Tony.
No. Happy time, people. Happy 36th birthday, Clayton Kershaw. It's a little bit of a surprise Kershaw is still in Los Angeles. There was talk he would sign with his hometown Texas Rangers, but Kershaw signed a one-year deal to remain with the Dodgers, where he came up to the majors in 2008. Kershaw probably wants to play with Shohei Ohtani. Who wouldn't? Kershaw is coming back from shoulder surgery. He's expected to pitch in the summer. He's a lock for the Hall of Fame, 1 MVP, 3 Cy Youngs. He should go over 3,000 strikeouts this season. His career record is 210-92. That's a winning percentage of .695. That's the best in the last 77 years. Career ERA 2.48. Last season, Kershaw was 13-5 with a 2.46 ERA.
Tony, there are rock star baseball teams occasionally. Obviously, the Yankees have that sometimes. The Red Sox, once every green moon, maybe the Cubs. But these Dodgers, I mean, Clayton Kershaw is one of the guys, one of the reasons you want to go see it. I am going to see the Dodgers in person. I want to sit in Chavez Ravine and watch the Dodgers and Kershaw play.
I'm sure they'll send a car to pick you up. Happy anniversary, Danny Ainge. On this day 43 years ago, the BYU guard went coast to coast with 7 seconds left to lead the Cougars past Digger Phelps and Notre Dame in the East Regional semifinal. At BYU, Ainge was an All-American and the Wooden Award winner. Ainge scored in double figures in 112 straight games, then the NCAA record. Ainge went to the NBA, played 14 seasons, made the playoffs 12 times, and was on 2 champions in Boston. He was a successful coach, a more successful general manager. He's now trying to revamp the Utah Jazz. He had a great and varied career in basketball, and I haven't even mentioned that he played 211 Major League games for the Toronto Blue Jays as an infielder.
Tony, when you and I were part of that panel voting on the best athletes of the 20th century, Danny Ainge was too low. He needs to be way up there because of the stuff you just said. And by the way, he was part of what I think, I'm going to anger some people now, the greatest starting 5 in NBA history. Parrish, McHale, Bird, DJ, Ainge. Best 5 in NBA history. Them.
Happy trails to Carlos Rodon's start yesterday after 5 2/3 innings. Rodon looked great. Didn't give up any hits, struck out 5. So after 5 2/3, Aaron Boone decided that was enough and sent a familiar Yankee out to make the change. Joe Torre. Torre in uniform went to the mound to take the ball from Rodon, who looked up and said, quote, "Ooh, and so Joe Torre, I got to give him the ball," unquote. Boone had personally invited Torre to camp as a guest instructor, got him to put on a uni. Boone worked on Torre for a couple of days to go to the mound, and yesterday Torre said, "All right, let's go." Torre returned to the dugout, flipping his palms outward to Boone and another famous guest instructor, Willie Randolph, as if to say, "How did I do?" "You did good."
Standing ovation for Booney, and teams in every sport everywhere ought to follow his lead and bring these greats back so people now who've forgotten everything that didn't happen before Get Up this morning can remember who the greats are.
You want to give an ovation to Boone? The people in the stands gave an ovation to Torrey, which is wonderful. We go to the big finish. The Knicks beat the Warriors in San Francisco. Cause for concern for Golden State?
Yeah, they can't climb out of the play-in, Tony, but the Knicks, they have their lineups out. They keep getting it done. Alex Ovechkin became the third player to score 20 goals in 19 consecutive seasons. I know you're impressed with that, aren't you?
It's a great, great achievement, right? But he only has 20 this year. He usually gets 40 plus. The Niners signed the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs, to a one-year deal to back up Brock Purdy. Is that a good fit?
I like Josh Dobbs no matter what, but good fit, it's all right. The Dodgers and Padres open in South Korea at 6:05 a.m. Eastern. Who you got?
I'm up then. I can watch. That makes me happy. Last one, NCAA play-in games tonight. Who you got?
Taking the locals from us, Tony. Howard and Virginia. Know the programs, know the coaches, rooting for both of them.
You're taking Virginia because Cheryl won't let you in the house if you don't. We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
And I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. And now, here's Sports Center.
PTI. Tony debate which bonus segment?
All right, Wilbon. Better Anthony Edwards play the dunk or the block?
This ain't close. It's the block. Not just because the block won the game, or secured the game. Not just that. Everybody in the NBA, including guys under 6 feet if there are any right now, can and does dunk the basketball. It's great. They don't dunk like Anthony Edwards did last night. But nobody makes that play in the league right now. Here's who makes the play historically. Baylor, of guys that size, and he's only like 6'4.5". Baylor, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron's bigger, he makes it. They don't make that play. He's completely fearless. I asked him the other night. He crashed to the floor. The T-Wolves people did not want him to play the next game. And I said, what was that? And he said, I'm young. I can crash to the floor. It doesn't matter. And Tony, he had a look on his face, and I'm going to say this, and this may shock you. It is Jordan-esque. I'm not saying he's as good as, or he can do all the same things as Michael Jordan. But there's a quality to Anthony Edwards that reminds me of Michael Jeffrey Jordan. People don't talk enough about him because he plays in Minnesota, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves because this kid is the deal.
This is so fabulous for me. You have spent the last 2 to 3 years saying of Minnesota how dumb they play. And for you to now come out and say that you like Anthony Edwards like this makes me very happy.
Love him.
There are a lot of dunks, and there are a lot of wonderful dunks. And Julius Erving made wonderful dunks, and David Thompson made wonderful. And I understand that. A block is, to me, a very special play in this particular case because, as you say, it preserved a win. I would argue, and I wouldn't argue this for Jordan, and I wouldn't argue this for Kobe, but I would argue that LeBron James's most famous play is a chase down block. I mean, it is for me.
Yes.
It's the thing I think of first with LeBron James. I would argue that Victor Wembanyama's entire highlight reel this year ought to be blocks. I mean, because they completely changed the
Love him.
This for Jordan, and I wouldn't argue this for Kobe, but I would argue that LeBron James's most famous play is a chase down block. I mean, it is for me.
Yes.
It's the thing I think of first with LeBron James. I would argue that Victor Wembanyama's entire highlight reel this year ought to be blocks. I mean, because they completely changed the notion of the game. So, yes, I will agree with you that if it's a block against a dunk, I'm almost always going to say a block. I am.
All right, there we go. There's too much agreement in that segment. That's it. We're done. Back to you.